If you're struggling with arguments and conflict in your marriage and starting to feel frustrated, here are 3 simple tools, all backed by research that you can use to build a stronger connection through the very arguments currently frustrating you. Now, the first one is that arguments can actually be a gateway to building better trust. Most people fear arguments because they think that all conflict is necessarily bad. After all, it doesn't feel comfortable, right? But there's a difference between conflict and disconnection. The main thing you should fear is disconnection because it means drifting apart and eventually getting closer to divorce, the ultimate disconnection. Now, conflict, if you handle it well, can actually help you bring to the surface some of the underlying causes of the disconnection. So I want you to approach any conflicts you're currently having with the mindset of discovering the underlying problem. Men who shut down during conflict are missing out on this valuable opportunity to discover what the underlying problem is. So, although it might feel counterintuitive, what you have to do is lean into conflict and learn to listen, because the conflict is an opportunity to discover what needs attention. When a marriage is almost at breaking point, the wife tends to go silent, right? She is the one who gives the man the silent treatment. When she is still introducing conflict though, and there's that fight there, she's actually trying to save it. So you need to be grateful for the fact that you have this opportunity to find out what the deeper problem is. Now, it's very important when you're focusing on that problem to truly stay focused on the problem. You do not need to attack her as a person. It's a subtle difference, but it's very important. Find out what the underlying problem is and refrain from personal attacks. The reason for that is that you want to protect your emotional bond with her. Remember, we're actually trying to build it. Conflict is a gateway to a stronger bridge of trust between the two of you. If, however, you attack her as a person and drift away from the problem, then what's going to happen is you will make her identity feel threatened. She'll feel like a bad wife, a bad person, and then she'll get defensive and you won't be able to use the conflict properly to your advantage. Now, really, what you need to stay focused on to achieve this is remember that we want to aim at cherishing her, not criticizing her. Now, what's the difference between the two? If you care enough to have this conversation, if you care enough to try to harness the conflict, it's because you're trying to build a better marriage for the both of you. It's not you versus her. That's an unhelpful frame to use. It's the two of you together as one flesh, trying to advance towards what the common goal is, a win-win for both of you. Not you win, she loses. You're not trying to prove a point or win some kind of petty battle over her. And the way you cherish her is actually by caring enough to have these hard conversations. Men who shut down and just go out and do things with their friends away from their wives and ignore their problems actually are creating more problems. So the act of actually having the hard conversation, leaning into the conflict, should make her feel cherished because she feels heard. Now, as you are focusing on trying to keep her feeling cherished rather than just criticized and attacked personally, it's really important that you use I statements rather than you statements, especially if you feel that you're starting to become a bit emotionally flooded. It's best that you don't talk about her by saying, you always disrespect me, or you never do X, Y, Z. Instead, just concentrate on your feelings, because it's much harder for her to challenge those or get angry about those, because they aren't personal accusations against her. They're just personal expressions of how you are feeling. Now, she might also learn things about you that she hasn't thought of before and be able to see you in a different light if you actually tell her how you've been feeling too. Because I would guess that if she's feeling frustrated, so are you. And often it actually starts with the man, because the man is always leading, whether he realizes it or not. Just sometimes he's leading in a bad direction towards disconnection. So the first point we looked at was learning to use conflict as a gateway to a stronger connection between the two of you. Now we're thinking about making sure that you stay focused on the underlying problem, not attacking her personally. Small difference, but very powerful. If you're thinking of ways in which you might have questions about these, drop the questions into the chat. I'll get to those shortly. Now, the third thing is something so many guys get wrong. You must speak softly. This is one of the most powerful ways that you can maintain frame as a man. Think of it as keeping kid gloves on when interacting with your wife. Don't go into this as you would a argument or even a physical fight with another man, where you're thinking of it in terms of giving everything you've got and really trying to make your points forcefully, directly, not holding back. Much better to start softly. Aristotle made the point that a small mistake in the beginning of an endeavor often leads to a big mistake in the end. Imagine trying to shoot an arrow at a target and your aim is just slightly off, but the target is 100 meters away. Well, by the time it gets there, the arrow is going to be way wide of the mark. And the same thing happens here in arguments. If you come in aggressively or seeking vengeance or with any kind of bitterness or resentment in your tone, then she's going to feel that and you're not going to get the outcome that you want. So get rid of the idea that you're trying to dominate or defeat her in any way. That's not what an argument is about. Actually, you two together are approaching a common enemy threatening your emotional connection and therefore your marriage. You are on her side, she's on your side. You're trying to get to the root of the thing that is threatening you both. So I recommend starting from a position of empathy and curiosity. So as far as possible, try to see her perspective. Really drill down using questions into why she is feeling the way she is feeling. Ask her how long she's felt that way and why. Since when exactly? What's made it worse? Are there any knock-on feelings because of that? What are some of the strongest memories she has associated with it? So empathy and curiosity tend to lead to the strongest starts. Throughout, remind yourself that you as the man, the leader, have to control the tone, because when you control the tone, you also get to control the temperature. Now, I find using questions really helpful for this. If you watch scenes where you might have like interrogations in police movies, the guy asking the questions is the guy holding frame and the guy in control. Now, if you're doing this in a soft, gentle way and your questions are making her feel heard, and also you're being generous with your attention too, really thinking about what she said, listening actively, helping her to clarify her thoughts and feelings, this is a great way to keep the temperature of the conversation where you want it to be. Now, we don't need to pretend that it's going to be a cool conversation, right? It's going to be a bit heated because of the nature of the material that you're dealing with. But you can stop it escalating to boiling point when things start to get disrespectful, and actually continuing the conversation further only does deeper damage. That's a mistake that many men make. Now, you might be thinking, this sounds weak to me. I wouldn't want to actually engage with her like that. I want to go in hard and really speak my mind and make sure that she knows who's boss. Well, you might have some success with that with a man in a work environment, but for a woman, that's actually frightening and intimidating. So don't approach her like she's a man. Treat her like the woman she is, and you'll actually get better results because of that. So it's not weakness to speak softly and use your tone to control the temperature. It's actually wisdom, because you understand that men and women are different and you need a different approach because of that. So those are the three main tips that I wanted to give you today, keeping it very simple and focused on what research actually shows works so that you can approach arguments in a much better way. Now, if you found this helpful, you might like to learn more in the Patriarchy Project. This is a great value community, only $7 a month, where you get weekly Zoom calls with me, proven courses on everything that you need to excel as a husband, as a father, and you get to be surrounded by other men all walking the same path. So if you're interested in the material, check out the link there. I'm sure you'll love it. Let me tell you a quick story about how some of what we've covered today helped a guy that I was working with. He had very deep resentment about his wife for various reasons, really. Sometimes it was about the money she was spending. Sometimes it was about her weight. Sometimes it was about the way that she was talking to him. He felt undermined, disrespected. And he was incapable of addressing these deeper problems because he got so angry that it came out in aggressive starts to the conversations that would then just end very quickly because she would leave the room or he would leave the room. Sometimes he would also say something to her that, because he was angry, was actually meant to wound her. He came in with this spirit of spitefulness, of wanting to inflict pain on her because of the pain that she had caused him. And he was getting nowhere, beating just a dead wall. Again, no progress. And it was not until he actually learned to empathize with her and how bad that she was feeling, and also be more curious about what it looked like to her and how things got this bad to her too, that he was able to actually see what the real problems were and then focus on those. Now, I actually call this not being the second woman in the relationship or the marriage, because there's a temptation there as the emotional volatility or the vortex opens up for the man to get sucked into it. And this really is lose-lose for everyone, because first of all, women tend to be more comfortable in that kind of environment. They do better with emotional volatility, and they're also faster verbally than men. So not a lot of good comes out of that, other than the man losing frame. But using these 3 simple techniques, he was actually able to hold frame and help her and lead the way out. So listen carefully, let her vent, lead the way out. Now, we're doing a deep dive on this same topic to look at your specific challenges in a live Zoom discussion tomorrow inside the Patriarchy Project. So if you have a particular situation you're struggling with that you want my advice on, then you can join and we will address that tomorrow, looking at some of these principles and actually how to apply them practically. So it's not just information, it's actually action. I don't know about you, but I find that a lot of guys have tons of information and not enough action. So that deep dive is really about the practical steps about how to fix this. Now, I would love to hear some questions from you now about ways in which these points we've covered have got you thinking about your own situations and any thoughts that you've got here, because the way most guys have been raised today, thinking like this about themselves and women and the dynamic in marriage doesn't come naturally. People have been brainwashed with equality so much that the idea of the man trying to hold frame like this and really focus on polarity through empathy is very difficult. So drop those into the chat now, and I'm looking forward to getting to as many of those as I can. I had a few come through in advance of the stream, so it'd be great to talk about a couple of those to begin with. Now, one was a lady who had recently had a baby, and they've been having all kinds of tensions between the two of them. And the question was, how can they actually clear the air? There's this resentment that's building up between the both of them. Now, first thing is to talk about it, right? Avoidance is not a good approach. So actually talking about it and being direct is the most important thing to do. Otherwise, you're letting it fester. Now, it might be the case that the woman actually has to tell the man first, here's how I'm feeling. And be very specific about it, because most guys actually do want to help and they're probably feeling the same way as you are. So this was a lady who asked the question. Make sure he knows how you are feeling and be very specific with how you see the problems and exactly what you think needs to change. Now, for the man in that situation listening, it's really important that you don't get defensive. You have to learn to listen to even criticism that might be unjust and then think about what the grain of truth in it might be. If you retaliate and start to attack her instead, then you're not going to be getting anywhere good. Instead, you're likely to be doubling down on the exact same problems that are causing everything going bad in the first place. So be direct, ask questions. That's one of the biggest misconceptions I find, is that when people are indirect and hope that just time is going to change things, in general, it tends to get worse rather than better. They feel that being direct is going to escalate problems, but actually the opposite is true. So if you're a man right now struggling with problems in your marriage and you're not doing anything about it, know that you're actually making them worse. You are part of the problem. You must get the tact and the skill to be direct, and hopefully these three things that we've looked at today will help you to do that. Next question. Do you ever get to a point in an argument where she or you get so emotional enough that it just makes sense to just walk away for a short amount of time for people to cool off? Yes, of course you can get to that point. Ideally, you recognize before you get to that point that you are approaching it. This is what's called flooding, and men are actually more prone to it than women are. You can even look at how stress affects men's cortisol levels and other markers of stress in the body, and men escalate faster than women do. It's like the fight or flight response is stronger in men. So if you're a guy who struggles with this, it's one of the most important things to know about yourself so that you can actually maintain frame and lead properly. So don't ask for a 5-minute break at the point when you already need it urgently. Instead, recognize through things like your breathing and just your own feelings of nervousness or anxiety, or even in some cases, anger or panic, that point is approaching. And then the best way to do it is just say that you feel the conversation would be more productive if you just took a couple of minutes out. You can leave the room if you need to, go for a walk, have a drink, whatever it might be. But the reason this is so important is that you want interactions between the two of you to always be respectful. And it seems like an obvious point, right? Why would you want disrespectful interactions? But people actually do that all the time. And the reason that's the problem is that when you are tolerating disrespectful interactions, either from her or from yourself, and just carrying on the conversation despite those, what you're really saying is that that's okay, right? This is a habit that you are building. Of course, it's a vice, not a virtue. It's a bad habit, but nevertheless, it is a habit, because behavior you tolerate is actually, in the end, behavior you end up approving and inviting. So you need to have a hard line against disrespect. It's also very important that you don't speak when you're not able to be meek in your expression. Sometimes a cruel word can actually end up doing more damage, right, and be remembered for decades than even physical violence. I've dealt with guys who have ended up in domestic violence situations, and we've turned things around and the marriage has healed. And sometimes that is easier to repair. This sounds crazy. That is easier to repair than extremely cruel words that can cut deep like a scalpel. So if you are someone who gets flooded easily, calm it earlier before you reach breaking point. Next question. This is a good one. How can I handle my wife's temper tantrums? I try to be calm, but her raised voice and hurtful comments eventually bait me into losing my temper. Very common situation. Thanks for admitting that. A lot of guys are in that exact situation, but don't actually say they are. Now, notice the key point here was eventually they bait you into losing your temper, right? I'll add your comment to the screen so we can really think about it. Eventually. Now, that is related to the previous question. So you need to learn how long that takes, and you might have a particular tolerance. Maybe you can cope with 2-3 minutes of that, right? And you need to have that as your cool-off point. Make some progress and then say, time out. We'll return to this when you are ready to start speaking respectfully again, because disrespect gets us nowhere good. And this isn't a personal thing, right, that you're imposing on her. Your hard no to disrespect is actually a deeply rooted yes in your marriage for the sake of both of you. It's bad for you to tolerate disrespect, but it's also bad for her to allow her to be disrespectful, and bad for your marriage too. Now, the temper tantrums in a calm moment, right? Could even be a very relaxed setting. You could have a date where you discuss this. In a calm moment, you need to be able to address this, starting with empathy and curiosity, remember, to find out why it is that she so often raises her voice or talks this way. Was it always like this in your memory, or was there a point when things were different and you could have calmer, more controlled conversations? Now, I would guess, just from my coaching experience, that she hasn't felt heard for a long time. And there are things that have been festering beneath the surface that aren't making her feel cherished. So empathize with her about that. See it from her perspective. Own up to it, right? You as the leader have to own up to that. And then find out from her what she needs to be able to move forward properly. You might also have a wife, and this is many guys too, who perhaps has ADHD or some other kind of condition that makes impulse control and emotional regulation difficult. You can look into supplements for that. You can also recognize that that is the way she is, and her ability to actually moderate herself when things get heated isn't what you want it to be. And don't take it too personally. This is how she responds to stress, and there's no need for you to respond in kind. So be the leader in the situation, be more masculine, don't take it so personally. Forgive her, move on, but always be focused on ways in which you can control her overall stress in her life so that she's less likely to reach breaking point like this so quickly. Hope that helps. A lot of guys are in that situation. If your wife does have a condition like ADHD or something similar that leads to heightened verbal aggression, you can actually learn to be grateful for it, because in a way it puts greater demands on you. So it's kind of marriage on hard mode. So it can forge you into even more of a man than you would have been otherwise. So it's nothing to sulk about. Next question. This is a good one. Just a thought. I'm dealing with an elderly mother this week, and some of what you mentioned, anger, respectful conversations, very much applies to this situation also. Yeah, of course it does. And it also applies to interactions with people at work, with other men too. What we're looking at here are just 3 really fundamental ways in which you can be more skilled as a communicator to increase your influence in any given situation. Because that's all leadership is. It's influence. So when we talk about frame, we basically talk about directing the conversation. And these 3 things that we're talking about, learning to keep conflict constructive so it fosters intimacy, staying focused on problems, not personalities, and also using soft startups. I've got very strong support in psychology and also in psychiatry for helping us to get those outcomes. Any more questions, put them into the chat. Enjoyed the ones so far. Remember, if this is going well for you and you're getting some insights, then inside the Patriarchy Project, we go into this in a lot more depth. And in our weekly Zoom calls, we explore similar concepts from a wide range of aspects to do with marriage. And we also have courses to do with things like how to handle money, because that's an important part of leadership. Also, we look at non-verbal leadership, like physical training, going to the gym, etc., fitting around family. And you're surrounded by other men who are all walking the same path, sharing their experiences. This is great value. It's only $7 a month. So click the link there if it's the kind of thing you'd like to learn more about. Now, I mentioned before that we've got a day 2 deep dive on this particular topic. So how to handle conflict better, in my opinion, is one of the most important marriage skills. So if you would like help with any particular challenge that you have been facing recently in your marriage, then we will get hands-on with you and think about practical solutions to those problems tomorrow in the live Zoom discussion. I'll be coaching in that. So if you'd like help, head to that, ready for tomorrow. Well, it looks like we've had all the questions so far. I hope everyone has got benefit from the 3 points that we've discussed. Just as a quick recap, so you can go away and apply this right away. We can actually see conflict as a gateway to building better trust. We also have to make wives feel cherished rather than criticized by staying focused on problems. And we control the temperature through controlling the tone, and that begins right at the beginning. Well, thanks for watching, and if you couldn't make it live, then feel free to add a comment into the YouTube stream below, and I'll get to those later. One more question's just come in. How should I react when she makes demands? For example, when angry, she will demand I sleep on the couch or insist that she is not going with me to a pre-planned destination. Ignore the demand. Well, this is the kind of thing that really I need to ask you some more questions about so I can understand the situation better and help you find the best solutions. So we deal with practical things like this and the how-to steps inside the patriarchy project. I would guess, however, that what's happened here is that she has learned from past experience that an effective way to control you is to have temper tantrums and make demands and threats. So you need to think about whether you have taught her that this gets the outcome that she wants. It is similar to parenting. If a toddler stamps his foot, screams, cries, throws his toys around, does he get what he wants? Or does he learn actually that that doesn't achieve his desired outcome? Often I find that the reason why a wife is behaving a certain way is because the man has taught her in the past that that particular tactic is effective. Now, some guys ask themselves, but what would happen if I just said I'm not sleeping on the couch? Well, I would guess from the way you phrase this, that if you told her after an argument that she's going to sleep on the couch or you made a particular demand, it wouldn't be effective, right? She wouldn't comply. And you know there's no point doing that. So she actually has a stronger frame in this situation because somewhere, somehow, an incorrect foundation has been laid. Go back, retrace your steps, and think about how you taught her that these tactics work well. And then you need to teach her that they don't and have the hard conversations necessary to have the correct foundations in place. No point seeing yourself as a victim, right? I know it's uncomfortable and I appreciate the fact that this is probably very frustrating for you, but seeing yourself as a victim is only going to emasculate you even more. So you must take responsibility for it. What's a good definition for cherishing? Well, ultimately, like the Catechism of Trent says, the husband has a duty to treat his wife generously and also honorably. So it comes down to honoring her, which isn't the same thing as being a yes man. Sometimes it means giving her a no. Honoring her, but also treating her generously. And that includes with your time and your attention and your conversation too. So that pretty much sums it up. But we have whole courses on practical ways in which you can create that feeling of being cherished for her inside the Patriarchy Project if you're interested in specific changes that you could make to actually achieve that outcome. How do we deal with different opinions to get a resolution? Find the common ground. You should have a vision for what your marriage is and the values that underpin it, and explain to her that where you want her to get to is actually for her benefit. If something that you are saying to her feels like a tyrannical imposition, it's likely because you haven't done the hard work of actually explaining why it's going to be better when life is like this. Remember, the ultimate point of your leadership is for her benefit. It's not something you exercise for its own sake. Your leadership matters to make life better for the both of you. So show her step by step in lots of little ways that when she trusts you, when you actually lead properly, this is the outcome. The more times you do it, the more excited she's going to be about you doing it in the future because she knows from the past that this is great. Are there certain domains that men should focus on versus women? And how do we take on her own wisdom? Well, I'm not quite sure what you mean by domains. In general, the man as the provider is going to be busy much of the time working on acquiring the material necessities for the support of the family. So that means, for example, that while he's busy doing that, the wife is going to be more focused on the children and the home. So there's a broad domain, and there are all kinds of things that follow from that. But within the household, ultimately everything is the husband's responsibility. He just delegates some things to his wife. And exactly how it looks from family to family might be different. There's no kind of exact cookie cutter template that every marriage must follow. Otherwise, it's not patriarchy. So this is why it's difficult, without knowing your situation better, to say who should be doing what, other than broad guidelines like what I've just given you. Depends as well on the personalities of the husband and wife and what their different aptitudes are. Is it better to admit even you are wrong and messed up, even though it's something shameful, like looking at other women? Yes, humility is a vital part of masculinity. It can feel tough in the moment. It can feel like something that you actually want to avoid. But pride is far more dangerous. So being humble and telling her the truth and explaining what you're going to do to fix things is actually a better way to forge connection than living in a prideful fantasy is. In the end as well, these things tend to come out. She will find out. She probably already knows. So it's best to actually honor her by being honest with her, right? We talked about cherishing involving honoring her. So make sure that you do that. Excellent. Really good questions towards the end there. So I hope you've enjoyed the stream. Make sure that you subscribe, share it with anybody that you think might benefit from it, and hope to see you next week as well. And if this has interested you and you want to go into more detail, then head over to patriarchy.com, start to join the Patriarchy Project and learn more. Thanks for watching. Take care.